Hello, everyone. I appreciate you tuning in today. This is Lost Vantage, and I just want to say that this story is long. I like the ending a lot. It has such a powerful meaning. It's very sad throughout the story, but you'll find out. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hadn't been back to the house in 6 years. That's the first thing you need to understand. 6 years is long enough for a place to change in your memory, for the edges to soften, for the colors to fade into something warmer than they actually were. I had been living in Seattle, building a life that felt deliberate and distant from this place, from these people. But Mom had called 3 times in 2 weeks, and the third time her voice had that particular quality. It wasn't quite pleading, but close, and it made it impossible to say no. She said it would just be the weekend. Everyone's coming, and it would mean so much to me if you did too. So I drove the 8 hours from Seattle to the house in rural Oregon, watching the landscape shift from urban sprawl to farmland, to that dense dark forest I had grown up surrounded by. The trees here are different than people expect. They are Douglas firs that grow so thick they block out the sky, creating a perpetual twilight even at noon. By the time I pulled into the gravel driveway, the sun was settling behind the tree line, casting everything in that golden orange light that makes shadows stretch long and strange. The house looked smaller than I remembered, but isn't that always the way? 2 stories, white paint peeling near the gutters, a wraparound porch that sagged slightly on the left side. Mom's car was there, and Uncle Tom's truck, and a few others I didn't immediately recognize. I sat in my car for a moment, hands still on the steering wheel, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest, the same one I had that this place had always given me. It always felt off. I couldn't name it. It was just a sensation, like walking into a room right after an argument has ended, when the air still feels charged, but everyone's pretending everything is fine. The house looked the same, though. The trees were the same, but something in the quality of the light, or maybe the way the shadows fell, or just the silence, felt wrong to me. I grabbed my overnight bag from the passenger seat and headed up to the porch steps. They creaked under my weight, especially the third step, the same one that I had always remembered creaking when I was a teenager, sneaking in past my curfew. Some things just don't change. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it open and called out to my mom. She told me she was in the kitchen, her voice warm and familiar. I stepped inside and the smell hit me immediately. Pot roast and rosemary, that particular combination of scents that meant Mom had been cooking all day. The living room was exactly as I remembered it. The same floral couch, the same coffee table with the water ring stain. No amount of polish could ever remove that. The same family photographs covering every available surface. Me at 8 years old, gap tooth and sunburn. My older sister Rachel at her college graduation. And Dad, who had been gone for 12 years now, standing in front of his workshop with sawdust in his hair. But there was something else. In my peripheral vision, just for a second, I caught movement near the hallway that led back to the bedrooms. It was a figure standing there, watching me. I turned my head quickly, but there was nothing. Just the empty hallway and the door to the bathroom. It was slightly ajar, afternoon light filtering through the window at the far end. You made it. Mom appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She looked older than I remember, more gray in her hair, deeper lines around her eyes, but her smile was warm and genuine. She pulled me into a hug that smelled like rosemary and fabric softener. I told her traffic wasn't too bad, hugging her back. Over her shoulder, I found myself looking at the hallway again, but it was still empty. I asked her, "Who else is here?" She said, "Oh, everyone's out back. Tom and Carol are setting up the tables. Rachel's around somewhere. Think she went upstairs to take a call. Your cousin should be here within the hour." She pulled back, holding me at arm's length to look at me properly. She told me I looked tired, and I just told her it's been a long drive. She said, "Well, come on. Let me get you something to drink. Everyone's going to be so happy to see you." She led me through the living room toward the kitchen, chattering about who was bringing what dish, who was running late, and the usual reunion logistics. I followed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The back of my neck prickled. I glanced over my shoulder, but I didn't see anything. The kitchen was exactly as I remembered, too. Yellow wallpaper with tiny flowers, the old gas stove, the round table where we'd eaten breakfast every morning as children. Through the window above the sink, I could see the backyard. Uncle Tom wrestling with a folding table, Aunt Carol arranging chairs, and the big oak tree that held my tire swing, casting long shadows across the grass. And there, standing near the tree line, where the yard met the forest, was a figure. It was tall, wearing something dark, possibly a coat or a long dress. I couldn't quite tell from the distance, just standing there, perfectly still, facing the house. I asked my mom, "Who's that?" She was pouring me a glass of lemonade. "Who's what?" "Out by the trees, Mom. That person standing there." Mom glanced out the window, casual and unconcerned. She told me not to worry about it. She said, "Here, drink this. You must be thirsty." I took the glass automatically, but I was still staring out the window, and the figure hadn't moved. I asked her, "But who is that?" She said, "Just someone who's here." Mom's voice had taken on a strange quality, not quite dismissive, but deliberately vague. "Come on, let's go say hello to Tom and Carol. They've been asking about you for a while." We headed toward the back door, but slowly. I kept my eyes on the figure by the trees. As we stepped outside, I expected them to turn and wave, do something that would identify them as a normal person at a normal family gathering. They didn't move at all. "There she is!" Uncle Tom's voice boomed across the yard. He was a big man, barrel chested, with a gray beard and hands like catcher mitts. He pulled me into a hug that lifted me slightly off my feet. "How are you, kiddo? 6 years. Have you forgot how to visit us?" I told him it was good to see him, and I was laughing. Aunt Carol was next. Her hug was gentle, but no less warm. "You look wonderful." Through her eyes were searching my face in a way that made me think she was looking for something specific. She asked me how my drive was. I told her it was good but long. I glanced past her. The figure was still there. I asked Aunt Carol, "Hey, who's that over there?" Her smile did not falter, but something shifted in her expression, a tightness around her eyes. She said, "Oh, just around." She touched my arm, her fingers cool even through my sleeve. "Some things are better left alone, sweetheart." The way she said it made my stomach drop. Not a casual dismissal, it was a warning. I asked her what does she mean by that, but she was already turning away, saying something to Tom about the tables, and the moment passed. I stood there in the middle of the yard, glass of lemonade in my hand, staring at the figure by the trees. They were much closer now. I was sure of it. They had been at the tree line before, maybe 20 yards from the house. Now they were maybe 15 yards away. I hadn't seen them move, but they were definitely closer. Rachel asked me if I was okay. Her voice made me jump. My sister had appeared beside me with her phone in her hand. She told me I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I asked her, "Do you see that person?" I pointed toward the trees. Rachel followed my gaze for a long moment. She didn't say anything. Then she asked, "See who?" And I told her the person right there. They're standing by the trees. She told me she didn't see anyone. I told her, "Rachel, they are right there. Dark clothes, just standing there watching us." My sister looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Maybe concern or something else. She told me, "There's no one there. Are you feeling okay? Or do you need to sit down?" "I'm fine." The figure was there. I could see them clearly. But Rachel was looking at the exact same spot, and she didn't see anything. I told her never mind. She said okay. Her voice was careful now, the way you talk to someone who might be fragile. She said, "Well, I'm glad you're here. It's been too long, sis." She squeezed my shoulder and walked back toward the house. The next hour passed in a blur of arrivals and greetings. Cousins I haven't seen since childhood, now with kids of their own, family friends whose names I'd half forgotten. Everyone was warm. Everyone was happy to see me. And everyone seemed determined to keep the conversation light and surface level. "How's Seattle? How's work? Are you seeing anyone?" I answered automatically, but I couldn't focus because the figure was still there. They moved again. Now they were standing near the oak tree, maybe 10 yards where everyone was gathering. Close enough that I could see more details. The dark clothing was definitely a coat, long and old fashioned. Their face was in shadow, but it had that distinct impression they were watching me specifically. No one else acknowledged them. People walked past carrying dishes of food, laughing and talking, and not one person glanced in the figure's direction. I tried asking again, casually, to my cousin Jennifer, "Hey, do you know who that is over there?" Jennifer looked where I was pointing and asked who. I said the person by the tree. She said, "I don't see anyone, hon. You sure you're okay? You seem a little bit out of it." I stopped asking after that. Dinner was served buffet style on the long tables Tom had set up. The food was exactly what you expect at a family reunion: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, rolls, three different kinds of salad. Everyone filled their plates and found seats, and a yard filled with the sound of conversation and laughter. I sat between Rachel and Uncle Tom, pushing food around my plate, barely tasting it. The figure had moved again. Now they were standing at the edge of the porch, partially obscured by the shadow of the house. Closer, always closer. "You're not eating," Uncle Tom said, his voice low enough that only I could hear it. I told him I'm not very hungry. He was quiet for a moment, chewing thoughtfully. Then, "You see them, don't you?" My head snapped toward him. "What?" "The one who's here." He wasn't looking at me, just staring down at his plate. "You can see them." "Tom, who is that? Why won't anyone tell me?" He sat down his fork. His hands were shaking slightly. "Some people can see, some can't. It's not something we talk about." "That's not an answer, Uncle Tom." but he told me it's the only answer I can give you, hon. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were sad. I'm sorry you can see them. I really am. It's easier when you can't. Tom, but he was standing up, taking his plate, walking away before I could press further. I watched him go, frustration wearing in my chest. I looked back toward the porch. The figure was gone now. Relief flooded through me, so intense it was almost dizzying. Maybe I had been imagining it. Maybe the long drive, the stress of coming back here after so long, had just made me see things that weren't there. Maybe. Then I heard it. From inside the house, the distinct sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving across the hardwood floor of the living room, then the creak of a cabinet door opening in the kitchen, the soft clink of glass against glass. Everyone else was outside. I could see them all. Mom, Rachel, Tom, Carol, all of my cousins. No one was in the house. Did you hear that? I asked Rachel. Hear what? The footsteps again, crossing the kitchen toward the hallway. The third step on the stairs creaking, the same one that had always creaked. Someone's inside, I said, standing up. Probably just the house settling, Rachel said. It's old, it makes noises. But I had already been walking toward the back door, my heart pounding. The sounds were too deliberate, too purposeful to be the house settling. Someone was in there. I stepped inside, letting the screen door bang shut behind me. The kitchen was empty, and the living room was empty, but I could feel it, that presence, that sense of being watched. Hello? My voice sounded small in the quiet house. No answers. I moved slowly through the living room, every nerve on high alert. The photographs on the walls seemed to watch me as I passed. The shadows in the corner felt too dark and too deep. Then I saw it, in the hallway, just for a second. A figure standing at the far end, near the bathroom door. The same dark coat. Face still in shadow, but this time I could see their hand, pale, long fingered, resting on the wall, as if steadying themselves. I asked, "Who are you?" The figure didn't move or speak, just stood there watching me with eyes I couldn't quite see. I took a step forward. The figure was gone. Not walked away, not moved, just gone, like they had never been there at all. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, my breath coming fast and shallow. The house was silent around me now. Through the window at the end of the hall, I could see the backyard. Everyone still eating and talking, completely unaware. Then I heard it again. Footsteps. Upstairs this time. Slow and deliberate, moving across the floor of what used to be my childhood bedroom. I looked at the stairs. Every instinct I had was screaming at me just to go back outside, to rejoin the others, to pretend I hadn't heard anything. But I couldn't. I needed to know. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking under my weight. The upstairs hallway was darker than I remembered, the afternoon light not quite reaching this far into the house. There were four doors: my old room, Rachel's old room, Mom and Dad's room, and the bathroom. My door was open. I was certain, absolutely certain, that it had been closed when I arrived. I'd glanced up here when I first came in, and all the doors had been closed. Now it was open, just a few inches, enough to see the darkness beyond. I approached slowly, my hand trembling as I reached for the doorknob. The metal was cold under my fingers. I pushed the door open. The room was exactly as I left it 6 years ago. Same bed with the faded blue comforter. Same desk under the window. Same posters on the walls. Bands I'd loved in high school. Movies I watched 100 times. It was like a perfect time capsule, preserved perfectly for me. But something was different. The photographs on the desk had been moved. I was sure of it. They'd been arranged in a specific way. I was obsessive about the kind of thing as a teenager, and now they were slightly off, like someone had picked them up, looked at them, and set them back down in almost the right place, but not quite. And there, on the edge of my bed, was an indentation, as if someone had been sitting there. The temperature in the room suddenly dropped. Not gradually. One moment it was normal. The next, my breath fogging in front of my face. I could see goosebumps rising on my arms. The cold was bone deep, the kind that makes your teeth ache. I turned slowly. The figure was standing in the doorway. This close, I could see more details. The coat was old, Victorian maybe, with button ups, the front and high collar. The face was still shadowed, but I could make out the shape of it. Angular, pale, neither clearly male nor female. And their eyes were looking directly at me. Not through me, not past me, but at me with deep recognition. I asked again, "Who are you?" The figure tilted their heads slightly, as if considering the question. Then they raised one hand, the same pale, long fingered hand, and pointed, not at me, but past me, at the photographs on my desk. I glanced back. The photos were of my family, Mom and Dad and Rachel, and me at the beach. Christmas morning when I was 10, my 8th birthday party in the backyard. When I looked at the doorway, the figure was gone, but the cold remained. I don't know how long I stood there, shaking, staring at the empty doorway. It felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Eventually, the cold began to fade, and I could hear voices from downstairs. Someone had come inside, was calling my name. Up here, I managed to call back. Rachel appeared at the top of the stairs. There you are. Mom's about to bring out dessert. You okay? You look pale. I'm fine. The lie felt heavy on my tongue. Just looking at old stuff. She glanced into my room, and something flickered across her face. Too quick for me to read. Yeah, it's weird being back, isn't it? Everything the same but different. Rachel, I need to ask you something. She told me okay. Has anyone died recently in the family? Her expression shifted. Why would you ask that? Just a question. No, no one's died. Everyone's here. Everyone's fine. She was looking at me with that careful expression again. Why? No reason, I said. Let's go get dessert. The sun was settling properly now, the sky turning deep purple and orange. Someone had strung up lights in the backyard, those Edison bulbs that cast a warm, golden glow, and the party had taken on a different atmosphere, more softer, more intimate. People were settling into chairs with coffee and pie, conversations growing quieter and more personal. I sat on the porch steps with a slice of apple pie I had no intention of eating, watching everyone and watching for the figure. They appeared and disappeared throughout the evening, never for long and never in a way that anyone else seemed to notice. But I saw them, standing near the oak tree, hand resting on the bark, in the kitchen window looking out at all of us, at the edge of the porch just beyond the reach of the lights. Each time they were closer. Each time I felt the same bone deep cold, that same sense of recognition, and each time they were looking at me. "You're seeing them a lot, aren't you?" Aunt Carol had appeared beside me, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She sat down on the step next to me, her shoulder touching mine. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then, "It means something, that you can see them." I asked her, "What does it mean?" She told me, "I don't know exactly, but it's not random. They don't show themselves just to anyone." She paused for a moment. "Tom can see them too. He's been able to see them since he was young. It runs in families sometimes." I asked her who they are. She was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she told me, "Someone who belongs here, someone who never left." I told her that's not an answer. She told me it's the only one I have. She stood up, brushing her pants off. "Be careful tonight. They are more active when it's dark, and they are getting closer to you specifically. I don't know why. Just be careful." She walked away before I could ask anything else, leaving me alone on the porch steps with my untouched pie and my racing heart. People started leaving around 9 o'clock, the families with young kids first, then the older relatives who had long drives ahead of them. Each departure was the same: hugs, promise to stay in touch, and cars pulling out of the gravel driveway with headlights cutting through the darkness. I stood on the porch, watching each person leave, counting them and making sure I knew exactly who was still there and who had gone. And I watched for the figure. They were there, standing near the oak tree as each car pulled away, just watching, never moving toward the driveway, never getting into a vehicle, just present. By 10 o'clock, it was down to just immediate family: Mom, Rachel, Uncle Tom, and Aunt Carol. Everyone else had gone home. "Well, Mom, well," Mom said, stretching. "Well," Mom said, stretching, "I think I'm going to head to bed. It's been a long day." She kissed my forehead. "I'm so glad you came, sweetheart. It means the world to me." I told her good night and gave her a hug. Rachel followed her inside a few minutes later, then Carol. Tom lingered on the porch with me, smoking a cigarette in silence. I told him they are still here. He said, "I know." I asked them why they won't leave. Tom took a long drag, the embers glowing orange in the darkness. "'Cause this is their home. They never left. They can't leave. Tom, please, just tell me who they are." He looked at me, then. He looked at me then, and in the dim light from the porch, I could see tears in his eyes. "I can't. I'm sorry. I just can't." He stubbed out his cigarette and went inside, leaving me alone. Alone except for the figure. They were staring at the bottom of the porch steps now. They were standing at the bottom of the porch steps now, close enough that I could see the details of their coat, the way the fabric moved slightly in the breeze, close enough that I could see their face clearly for the first time. It was familiar, not in a way I could immediately place, but in a way that made my chest tighten, like looking at an old photograph and recognizing someone but not being able to remember their name. I asked, "What do you want?" The figure raised their hand, the same pale hand, and pointed, not at me this time, at the house, at the door behind me. They wanted me to go inside. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to get in my car and drive back to Seattle and never come back. But I couldn't move. I was frozen, staring at the impossible thing, the person who shouldn't exist. The figure lowered their head. The figure lowered their hand and took a step closer, then another. They were on the porch steps now, climbing slowly. The temperature dropped again, and my breath fogged. My hands were shaking so hard I had to clench them into fists. The figure reached the top of the steps and stood directly in front of me. This time, I could see their eyes clearly. They were gray, sad, and familiar. Please, please just tell me who you are. The figure reached out, and for a moment I thought they were going to touch me, but instead their hand passed through me. Not solid, not real, and I felt a cold so intense it was like being plunged into ice water. Every nerve in my body screamed. Then they were past me, moving through the door into the house. I stood there, gasping, my whole body shaking. When I could finally move again, I turned and looked through the screen door. The figure was standing in the living room, looking at the photographs on the wall. Their hand was outstretched, fingers hovering over the frame as if they wanted to touch it but couldn't quite make contact. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. Who are you? Please. I asked again, but my voice much stronger now. The figure turned and looked at me, and then slowly, they raised their hand and pointed at one of the photographs. I walked closer, my legs unsteady. The photographs they were pointing at was older than most of the others, black and white, the edges yellow with age. It showed the house, this house. But from decades ago, and standing on the porch were four people, a man, a woman, and two children. I leaned closer, squinting at the faces. The woman looked like my grandmother. The man must have been my grandfather. I had never met him. He died before I was born. The two children. One of them looked like my mother, young, maybe 8 or 9 years old. The other char- the other child was harder to make out. The photograph was slightly blurred as if they'd moved right as the picture was taken. But I could see enough: dark hair, pale skin, and a serious expression. I asked, "Is that you?" The figure did not res- the figure didn't respond, but they were still pointing at the photograph, at that blurred child. I turned to look at them directly. Are you family?" The figure tilted their head, and for the first time I thought I saw something like sadness in their expression. They raised their other hand and pointed at me, then at themselves, then at the photograph. Family. But I don't understand. Who? You should be asleep. I spun around. Mom was standing at the bottom of the stairs in her bathrobe, her expression unreadable. Mom, there's someone here. I turned back at the figure. They were gone. Mom said there was no one here, just you and me. But I saw them. They were right here, looking at that very photograph. Mom, who is this? I pointed at the blurred child in the old picture. I pointed at the blurred child in the old picture. Mom's face went pale. She walked closer, slowly, and looked at the photograph. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she told me, "That's no one. That picture is old. It doesn't matter." I said it does matter. That person, that child, they are here, Mom, in this house, right now. I've been seeing them all day. She told me I was tired. The drive was long. She said I was seeing things. But I pleaded, "I'm not seeing things." My voice was louder than I intended. Tom can see them too. Carol knows about them. Everyone knows something is wrong here, but no one will tell me what it is. My mom's eyes filled with tears. "Please, honey, please just go to bed. We'll talk about this in the morning." I told her, "No, I want to talk about it now. No, I want to talk about it now. Who is in the photograph? She told me she can't. I'm not allowed to talk about this. I asked her why not. She said because it hurts too much. The words came almost the words came out as almost as a shout. The words came out as almost a shout. Mom pressed her hand against her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Because I've spent 40 years trying to forget, and I can't. And seeing you see them. She just couldn't finish the sentence. I stand I stared at her, my heart pounding. Mom, what happened? She shook her head, backing away. I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry. I can't do this, hon. She turned and practically ran. She turned and practically ran up the stairs, and I heard her bedroom door close firmly. I stood alone in the living room, staring at the photograph, my mind racing. 40 years, Mom was in her late 50s. 40 years ago, she would have been a teenager, and the child in this photograph looked about 8 or 9, which would make them. I pulled the photograph off the wall, holding it closer to the light. The blurred child, the one standing slightly apart from the others, something about their posture, the way they held themselves, felt wrong, sad, isolated. I whispered to the photograph, "Who are you?" Behind me, I heard the third step on the stairs creak. I turned slowly. The figure was standing on the stairs, halfway up, one hand on the railing. They were looking at me with those sad, gray eyes. Then they spoke. The voice was quiet, barely more than a whisper, but I heard it clearly. I'm sorry. My blood turned to ice. Sorry for what? But the figure was already moving, climbing the stairs, disappearing into the darkness of the second floor. I followed it. I don't know why. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to run, to get out of this house, to never come back. But I couldn't. I needed to understand. The upstairs hallway was pitch black. I fumbled for the light switch, but when I flipped it, nothing happened. The bulb must have blurned out. The bulb must have burned out. I used my phone's flashlight instead, the beam cutting through the darkness. The hallway was empty, all the doors were closed, except for mine. My door was open again, just a few inches, and from inside I could hear something, a soft sound like someone crying. I pushed the door open. The figure was sitting on my bed, their head in their hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The temperature in the room was arctic, and my breath came out in a thick cloud of fog. Please, I said, my voice shaking, please just tell me what's happening. The figure looked up at me, and for the first time, I could see their face clearly without shadows and without blur. They looked like me, not exactly, but close enough that it was unmistakable. The same dark hair, the same shape and the same face, the same eyes. I whispered, "Oh my goodness." The figure stood up slowly. They were still crying. I could see tears on their cheeks. Though they made no sound, they walked toward me, and I wanted to back away, but I couldn't move. They stopped directly in front of me and raised their hand. This time, when they touched me, I felt it. Not solid, but not nothing either, like a cold breeze taking shape. Then I saw it, not with my eyes, with something else, a memory that wasn't mine, a feeling, a knowing. A child alone in this house, forgotten, neglected, something terrible happening, something no one wanted to talk about, something that ended with a small body in the woods behind the house, hidden, never found, and never acknowledged. A sibling, my mother's sibling. The one no one ever mentioned. The one who died when Mom was young. The one whose death was ruled an accident but wasn't. The one who'd been erased from family history, from photographs, from conversation. The one who never left. I gasped, stumbling backwards. The figure was still standing there, still crying, looking at me with those familiar eyes. You're my aunt. Or uncle. Your mom's. The figure nodded slowly. I asked, what happened to you? They opened their mouth, but no sound came out. Instead, they pointed downward, toward the floor, toward the ground beneath the house, the woods. You're buried out there, aren't you? The figure nodded, and no one knows. No one talks about it. They just pretend you never existed. The figure's face crumbled, and they pressed their hands to their chest, as if the pain was physical, as if after 40 years it still hurt to be forgotten. I told it I'm so sorry. I am so very sorry. The figure looked at me for a long moment. Then they reached out and touched my face. The same cold, not quite solid touch, and I understood. They weren't trying to scare me. They weren't trying to hurt anyone. They just wanted to be remembered, to be acknowledged, and to be seen. They had been alone in this house for 40 years, watching family gatherings, watching life continue without them, unable to leave, unable to rest. And I was the first person in decades who could see them. I see you, I said, tears streaming down my face. I see you. You're real. You existed, and you matter. The figure's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but something close. Relief, or maybe gratitude. Then they began to fade. Not disappear, but fade. Like a photograph left in the sun too long. The colors washing out. The details becoming less distinct. They were still there, but less solid, less present. I told it to wait. Please don't go. I can help you. I can tell people. But they were shaking their head. They pointed at me, then at their own chest, then at the photograph I was still clutching. Remember, that's all they wanted. Just for someone to remember them. I promised it that I will remember, and I'll make sure everyone remembers. The figure nodded once. They were gone. Not just faded, they were gone. Cold disappeared. The oppressive weight in the air lifted, and the room felt normal again. Just a bedroom, just a space, nothing more. I stood there for a long time, crying, holding the photograph, feeling the weight of 40 years of silence pressing down on me. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed staring at the photograph, trying to make every detail out of the blurred child, trying to imagine what their life had been like, what happened to them, and why no one ever told me. When the sun finally came up, I went downstairs. Mom was already in the kitchen making coffee, her eyes red and puffy. Mom, we need to talk. She didn't turn around, she just said, I know. Tell me about them, please. I need to know. She was quiet for so long that I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, their name was Sam. They were my younger sibling. They died when I was 15. It was ruled an accident. They wandered into the woods and got lost. And by the time we found them, it was too late. But it wasn't an accident. Mom's shoulders tensed. No, it wasn't. Our father. He had a temper, and Sam was different, quiet and sensitive. He didn't understand them. None of us did, really. And one night, things got out of hand. Sam ran into the woods, and we never found the body. Not really. Just pieces. Animals had gotten to it. Dad buried what was left out there somewhere, made us promise to never talk about it, said it would destroy the family if anyone knew. I said, "So you just forgot them?" "We tried to," Mom said. She finally turned to look at me, her face streaking with tears. "We took down their photographs, stopped saying their name, and pretended they never existed. It was easier than living with the guilt, easier than admitting what we had really happened, easier than admitting what really happened." I told her, but they never left. They've been here this whole time, watching and waiting to be remembered. Mom nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know, I've always known. I can't see them like you can, but I can feel them. Every time I come, every time I come into the house, I feel them. And it kills me. It killed me for 40 years." I walked over and hugged her, and we stood there in the kitchen, both of us crying, both of us carrying the weight of a secret that had poisoned our family for decades. I told her we need to do something. We need to find where they are buried, give them a give them a proper funeral, and put up a headstone, something. "Your Uncle Tom knows where," Mom whispered. "He helped Dad bury them. He's never forgotten himself. He's never forgiven himself. Then we'll ask him, and we'll do this right. We'll make sure Sam is remembered." Mom pulled back, looking at me with something like hope in her eyes. "You really saw them last night?" "Yes, they were here, Mom. They have been here all along." "What did they look like?" I showed her the photograph. "Like this, but older, sadder, like they just wanted someone to see them, to acknowledge that they existed." Mom stared at the photo for a long time. Then she pressed it to her chest and sobbed, deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like they had been held in for 40 years. We found the grave 3 days later. Tom led us into the woods behind the house to, s- to a spot about half a mile where the trees grew thick and the ground was soft. There was no marker, no indication that anyone was buried there, just earth and leaves and silence. We brought a priest, we brought flowers, and we brought a small headstone that read, "Sam, beloved child, forever remembered." As the priest said the words, I felt it, a shift in the air, a lightness, like something had been held down for too long was finally being released. I didn't see the figure again, but I felt them there, standing beside me, finally at peace. I go back to the house now, not often, but sometimes, and each time I bring flowers for Sam's grave. I sit there in the woods and tell them about my life, about the family, about everything they missed. I make sure they are not forgotten, because that's all they ever wanted, to be seen, to be remembered, and to be mattered, and to matter, and now they do. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone in that house, I still feel them. Not frightening, just sad, just present. A reminder that some things can't be buried and some truths can't be hidden. Some ghosts never really leave, they just wait for someone brave enough to see them. I just want to say, if any of y'all made it to the end of the video, if you would like to comment anything down below, that would be appreciated. And this was such a beautiful story. If you really liked it, would you be so kind to give me a thumbs up and subscribe? I thought that this was very cool and very sad and deepening. And it's always a good thing to remember people and to make people feel important in your daily life, even if it's holding a door for them or being kind to somebody every day. You know, this story might not be true, but it still has truth behind it. And that's what makes it beautiful, because people do deserve to know that they matter and that they are seen. And If you could be so kind that if you made it to the end of this video, if you see someone in the future, coming future, maybe tomorrow or something, just be kind to them. Thank them for helping you do something small, or hold the door for them, or just a small greeting to let them know, hey, you matter today. That's what's important. Thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in, and stay tuned for the future. Thank you.